Ross, could you give us a quick rundown of how you ended up with the #1 college comedy website on the internet, a New York Times bestselling book, and several very popular podcasts? Can you maybe just walk us through a brief timeline of all that?
Yeah, I'll give you like the shortest possible version. So I went to college with the two guys who started this company called Grandex. And when they started the company, their one property was totalfratmove.com, known as TFM at its height. And it kind of started out as this website where it was just one-liner frat guy jokes like, you know, did a beer bong and got a blowjob. Just the dumbest possible, you know, base level humor. But those little one-liners did really, really well on social media to the point that TFM became a huge brand. And they had the ability to hire me straight out of school as their first employee at the company that I still work for almost 8 years now, called Grandex. And Grandex was able to utilize Total Frat Move to blow everything else up that we do, including the podcast, including some e-commerce stuff that we've done over the years. And now the most current iteration of the company that you see is the one revolving around what you guys are focusing on now, which is podcasting and audio content. And so I started with my Game of Thrones show, Oysters, Clams, and Cockles. That's where I kind of delved into the audio realm. And like, it's so funny because I've done hundreds of episodes of podcasts now, and I'll go back and listen to myself from the first show I ever did, and I sound completely different. Like, I just wasn't comfortable talking. Like, it's such a weird experience having yourself recorded for the first time or whatever. So
we've already thrown away a couple of our episodes for the same reason.
So this is like what I do now as a profession, which is bizarre for somebody who, like, I just have never really known, you know, what it was that I was going to be drawn to and end up doing as a career. And this is definitely it. Like, audio content, video is great too, but typically I just do audio. I have a face for radio, and it's been a lot of fun so far. So the Game of Thrones show took me to a level of exposure where I was able to launch my own show, the Ross Bolen podcast, which is what I focus on now, primarily for in the off season for Game of Thrones. Once season 8 comes back on, I guess I'm just not going to sleep anymore. It'll be interesting to try to make that work timing wise, but yeah, I mean, I'm loving it. I'm getting to meet a lot of fun new people like you guys. I wouldn't have ever met y'all or talked to y'all if this wasn't what I did for a living. So I'm happy. I'm enjoying it.
Cool. It is the funnest part.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So having been involved in so much of that fraternity lifestyle, and even just because you live in Austin, Texas, which is known for its nightlife and is widely known as a party town, how has drugs and alcohol played a role in your life, and where are you with that currently?
Oh my God. We need like several episodes to go through. Like, I'll give you the shortest version again. It's always played an enormous role. Even now, I've been sober or dry. I've been dry for just over a year, like a year and like 4 days. I just celebrated my
Congratulations.
Birthday. Thank you. But even not drinking, alcohol still plays an enormous part of my life because I talk about it a lot and how I don't do it anymore, but also because everybody I hang out with still drinks. Like, just because I can't do it doesn't mean that they can't do it, you know? So, I mean, it's and different people, let me say this. I don't classify myself as an alcoholic in the typical definition of the word because I don't like to box myself in. It's nothing against AA or like alcoholics or anybody that considers themselves an alcoholic. It's just not the label I choose to give myself, because the truth is I'm just an addictive personality. Like, I definitely am an addict. I definitely I label myself as that for sure, because I think I have the ability to overdo anything that I love and really put my mind to. So alcohol just happened to be one that I did that, and it was unhealthy. Like, it had negative results and impact on my life. So it's crazy because it's shaped my career too. Like, not just my personal life, you know, partying my ass off from like 16 to, I guess, 21 technically, even though I tried for a few more years. I wasn't really able to do what I used to do anyway. Once I started having panic attacks, it had a massive impact on my ability to party. But all through the years of drinking, I took LSD once in high school it was so long ago, but it was the only hallucinogen I've ever done. And it was such an intense experience that I'll always both credit that and blame it for like who I am today in a way. I don't know if maybe the only reason I have panic disorder is because I did LSD, but also I'm not unhappy that I have panic disorder because it makes me who I am and it shapes the way that I look at the world and how I make decisions.
Is it why you stopped drinking?
It's a big part of why I stopped. It's not why I stopped. I would have stopped 8 years ago, 10 years ago, if panic disorder and anxiety were the reasons. It was more because I'm just a terrible drunk. Like, I can't drink for shit. I love drinking too much, and I have social anxiety. So once I get in my zone and I'm, like, working the room or whatever, I don't want to stop. And it's never like 2 or 3. I'm one of those people that always overdoes it. And at the end of the night, after everything has been entertaining and everybody's had fun and whatever, I turn into somebody that I don't like, that I don't think anybody would like, so I had to get away from that. And that was the reason I quit drinking. It just didn't, I mean, you wouldn't continue to do anything or take in any substance that made you into somebody you didn't like. But it's so hard with alcohol because of the way that our society is structured socially.
Yeah.
It makes it so much more of a pain in the ass, really, is all it is. It's a pain in the ass.
It's like our culture wants us to be alcoholics.
Right.
Almost.
The example he was actually talking about this earlier today was like, if you ate Honey Nut Cheerios every morning, and every morning it made you sick, you would stop eating Honey Nut Cheerios immediately. Nobody would care.
Or if there was a label on the box that says, like, this could cause this to happen, you know?
Right, sure. It's a weird stigma with alcohol and the way it plays such an important part socially for everything that we do. I don't know if that's just America specifically that it feels worse. I'm not like worldly and cultured enough to know if it's the same level in Europe or whatever. But here it's like, man, if you wanna have a social life, you either are gonna drink, you're gonna struggle as a drinker, or you're gonna have to be sober and find a way to do it without alcohol, because it's always there.
Did you notice that when you took alcohol out of your life that it turned up the volume on another vice of yours, or anything that you kind of transferred that energy into?
At first, absolutely. Sports betting was like the one that took over for me, at least at first. And that was like the most, I won't say I'm a smart guy, but I'm smart enough to know that there was going to be a way I was going to fill the gap with something, like just asked about. And that was it for a little while. And fortunately, I didn't make enough money at the time for that like really matter. But if that happened now, it could be a problem. The point being, I figured out a way to balance myself to where there's not one thing like filling the gap of alcohol anymore. It's just kind of the way I live is different in all aspects, so that I don't feel like anything is missing, period. But I will say this. I used to smoke weed a lot in high school. I was a big stoner when my parents were going through their divorce when I was a kid. That happens to a lot of teenagers. Like, it's just like drinking can be. And I wasn't like a pothead, really, you could say, for a really long time. I picked up smoking weed, like recreationally, again, when I quit drinking as a way to help me kind of deal with it, right? Like, it's a weird transition going from everything in your life revolving around alcohol and alcohol being the social lubricant that it is for you to not having anything at all. So I was like, well, I'm going to use something that I know doesn't turn me into an asshole or make me a fat piece of shit as my, like, you know, to bridge the gap. And then what I found over the coming weeks and months, and now sitting here a year into it, is weed's actually just like a great overall replacement for me. It's definitely the biggest piece of that, you know, filling that gap for me, because it's just an escape from, right? Like, it's just an escape from the everyday stressors that I deal with. And it's one that works for me, that I feel like helps level out my anxiety. I've even actually worked it into my social, like the way I operate socially a little bit, which is hard for a lot of people to smoke weed. Most people don't want to get high and like go to a dinner, for example, or go to a party. I can do that now, and I'm totally used to it, and it's really fun, which is bizarre, because there was a point where I was like, the last thing in the world that I would want to do was to join and be in a room full of people. Now that's just the way I do it. But anyway, it's just been the weirdest, like, whirlwind of a transition to the point that marijuana, cannabis, whatever you want to call it, I just say weed, helped me so much with getting out of the world of alcohol that I've actually become like an advocate for its legalization and use, which is weird for a guy.
Well, it's a lot better than the medication that a doctor would prescribe.
Right. Well, it's just like, because I openly struggle with addiction, yet I openly smoke weed, and it's a strange thing to keep, you know, down.
Yeah, well, I know we talked about before, consequences are a gift. I have a bit of social anxiety and panic as well. So I never went down the road of alcoholism because I also struggle with an addictive personality, and all of my family does. So I never went that route because everything that you're saying happened is what I saw coming. And so I saw those consequences as a...
I could definitely see it coming too, but that's the kind of person that I am. Like, I saw a lot of the issues that cropped up for me with drinking coming, but I chose to like try anyway. Like, I was stubborn about it. I was like, fuck that. I'm going to make this work. I'm going to find a way to make myself be able to be like everybody else, drink socially. I'm going to do this. And I even quit for like 6 months or 8 months at one point, and then I came back to drinking because, I was like, I wasn't ready to let go.
Do you think that in some human... I'm sorry if I'm interrupting you. I don't know exactly how to word this, but I feel like I've noticed, especially in myself, who I don't necessarily say, I'm a quote-unquote addictive personality, but I think all humans are addicted to something, right? Like, we all have vices. We all have things that we go to that cause us immediate pleasure or euphoria or something. And we take a little hit of whatever it is, whether it's spending money on sports betting or shopping for some women or whatever the thing is. Is there something to the idea that humans like have this addictive personality that's maybe born out of originally like some sort of survival technique, some sort of part of our lizard brain, but then we continue to do it even when we know we're going down a bad road because we want to find the like boundary. We want to find our bottom. Like, we want to be all the way at our limit.
I believe certain people are like that, certainly, because I'm one of them. That's exactly that's what I was trying to say. You did a much better job. But yeah, with every single thing I've ever done, I've found the limit so far, and it's a terrible, really fucking bad. But it's also been a lot of fun, and it's like, if you can dance around the fire enough to enjoy the warmth and maybe share it with some other people and not get burned, it can be fun. But
you always get burned. You always get burned. But your scars are reminders, right? I mean, like, put it into, I don't know, some sort of context is we talk about this actually a lot on the show. We need contrast in order to live. Like, life is born from everyday contrasts, whether it be you're hitting rock bottom, and because you hit rock bottom and you're in this total darkness and you're in this space that, there's nothing worse that could happen except for maybe you dying. The only option is up from there, right? The only option is to climb out of that hole and decide to actually live. And then that's the part where life is allowed to exist, if that makes sense. Like,
right. There was this weird quote to tie everything together. When I was in a fraternity in college, I was a member of Kappa Alpha Order, which is a Southern fraternity, if you will, which is funny because I don't fit into the box that the stereotype that goes with this fraternity is like Southern shit-kicking cowboy guy, racist. That's the stereotype. Now, that's obviously not true of most of the members, if any of them. I can't speak. I haven't been in the organization for 8 years. I'm not going to sit here and defend it. But point being, one of the things they teach you when you're a pledge is some quote, and I think it's from Robert E. Lee, who is obviously a pretty controversial figure in history as the general in the Confederate Army. But the quote was something like, you can't enjoy the bitter, or you can't enjoy the sweet without the bitter, or something like that. Talking about it's the contrast.
Yeah, yin and yang.
Every human has those levels of ups and downs in that yin and yang somewhere. Yeah. It's just to what extremes does it exist? And sometimes I feel like, for me, like, I have the most extremes possible that I'm bouncing. But then every once in a while I'll meet somebody, and I think y'all are a good example, where it'll change my perspective a little bit. And I'm like, it's not that anybody's experience is worse or better than anybody else's. Everybody's is just different. And it all depends how you look at it. Like, I think some people's lives are boring that have never had extreme ups and downs, and they're totally cool. And I might judge them thinking they're not exciting and they've never done anything wild or lived. But for them, if it makes them happy, like, well, who the fuck am I to say what they should be doing?
Yeah, and I don't know what their childhood was like that, like, makes it to where that's what they enjoy, Yeah.
And I was going to say that similarly, Jade, off that point, this is something you and I have discussed we're getting way into the weeds right now, so just maybe go with us here. Yeah, I know. It reminded me when you were talking about that there's these archetypes in psychology. They have these relationship archetypes, the anchor the wave and
the
island, yeah, where I've recognized that I'm a wave, which is, by the way, not a good thing. Yeah, and I'm with an island, but
I'm with an island.
The idea is to figure out like who you are, essentially what the archetype you're living at currently, and try to move towards being an anchor. Because an anchor is the person you're talking about who seems like maybe they have a boring life a lot of times because they're so balanced and there isn't this like drama happening or like this, they're not doing these extreme things maybe. But that's probably because they don't need it in order to be happy. And I think in a person like me, where I do seek out like very extreme, I'm very extreme when it comes to like work. Like maybe that's where my addiction is. Like I literally work myself till my body falls down dead, and I'm just like sick as a dog because of what I've done to myself essentially, and not taking care of myself. But my brain, the way it works because of my childhood or, all the ways that brought me to who I am today, my brain works that way because my brain works that way in wanting an extreme measure to push me to do the next better thing. So I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but I have to get to a dark place, in order to move forward into the next light.
Dude, I'm the exact same way. Like the exact same way.
We're all waves.
So fucking weird. Yeah, I don't know why.
It's gonna be Nami today.
No, that's how I am with anything though. Like I have to wrecking ball. I do a lot. It's like I've been described as a self-destructive person before, which I used to agree with to some level, but I don't know if that's it. Like if self-destruction is really fair, so much as I'm just like, I feel way more like a limit tester than I do like I'm trying to self-destruct. Because like I can assure you, I don't want to destruct myself. I enjoy myself quite a bit. That's just the way I am. I don't know why. It's fucking difficult though. It makes everything a lot harder, it feels like, than it has to be, which is, what's that?
You should pick up the book, Transforming Your Dragons, because it talks about that, having that as a dragon. It's not something that you want. It's just something that has like a control over your life, and it gives you like steps for how to slay that dragon or transform it.
It's very Game of Thrones, so.
Yeah, no, it's really good. My shaman wrote it. But yeah, I highly recommend it.
Your shaman.
Shaman.
How many people have a shaman that have a shaman?
I know.
You're doing it.
How did getting sober affect your friendships and your marriage?
Oh my God, it made it totally different, but so much better. It was weirder with friendships than it was with marriage, because for my wife, Taylor, it was just such a relief, I think, for alcohol to finally not be something poisoning our marriage. The changes were all positive, so they didn't feel drastic. Whereas with friends and getting used to the social side of it, that was the battle that took so long. And really, like, you know how it is with peer pressure when you're in college and when you're in high school, and even up into your like early adult years.
Even really, now,
like in your early. Sure, there's always some level of it, but like now I don't even know what you could peer pressure me to do. I'm trying to think of something. I don't even know what would work. My point is, I used to be much more heavily influenced by that, and it was something that it always drugged me back. Like people would make fun of me for like, I was like, I'm having anxiety, I'm not drinking tonight, and I'd get talked into it because I cared what everybody else thought, and I wanted to be, the guy that was partying and having fun with everybody.
But once you said you were sober, that kind of stopped with your friends?
But it finally, I think, clicked for them too. It's like, holy shit, like he's actually cutting it out 100% out of his life, and I think they could see it in my face, like this was rock bottom. Like I was ruining shit that I was not going to be able to recover from if I didn't stop. And I just finally, if this was my rock bottom, it was I'm very blessed. Because I'm pretty high, is what it felt like. So, because I've seen other people at rock bottom, and it can get really, really, really bad. I've been to enough AA meetings and spent enough time in jail to know what that looks like. And I got lucky to be in the position that I'm in, where my rock bottom wasn't so low.
Because I know I don't say that I'm sober, but I say I rarely drink. Because I do. If I have sushi, I'll have sake. But if I order a drink, I hardly ever finish it also. But I know, like, if I go to a wedding, it's like people just keep asking me to take a shot. And if I'm like, oh, no, I'm not drinking, it's like it doesn't stop, especially the more they drink. It's like, no, let's take a shot and go on the dance floor. And I'm like, well, I can go on the dance floor I don't want a shot. And it's like it's asked a couple times. So I think unless you are actually saying you're sober, they're going to keep asking, I guess. So maybe that made a big difference for you.
I even have people a year deep, and I'm not like one of these people. I don't go out a ton with strangers or like meet a whole bunch of new people. I typically hang out with the same group of friends that I have. You know, I'm 31, I'm married, I've got 2 dogs, I'm chilling. And I actually have people in my close group of friends who on occasion will cross the line and be like, come on, why don't you just have a drink or whatever? Like, and it's
crazy.
And it's always after they've had several though. And I think it's people who might struggle on their own with it. And
they're not comfortable with it.
The misery loves company thing.
And you're holding up a mirror to their addiction because you're not drinking.
Yeah. So it can still be, even now, it can be weird with my friends on occasion, and that's just part of the way. Like I'm like I said, I'm a party guy. I loved partying more than anything, and that's why it was so hard to walk away from drinking. Is because that's what fueled that lifestyle for me. And so the people that I'm close with and that I love very much, they still like to party and they drink a lot, and on occasion it comes up. And I've accepted that that's just part of it. I'm going to have to deal with or whatever.
Yeah.
Have you found that, you know, being so vocal with you not drinking anymore on your podcast and now making the year mark for that, have you seen a large response from your fans and followers?
Oh my God. It would blow your mind. I mean, I've been trying to find a way or think of a way that I can show the world the response that I've gotten.
Yeah, that gives me goosebumps.
The amount of replies and DMs and Snapchats and tweets and Facebook messages and emails and voicemails. My voicemail machine has over 3,000 messages on it.
Wow.
And I can't keep up with it. It just keeps refilling. Anyway, so many of those are people who are saying like, I've had, you know, struggled with anxiety or depression or self-consciousness issues or whatever for years, or I've always had a drinking problem and never known how to put my finger on it, and like it's exactly what you've described or whatever. It's amazing to me how many people struggle with drinking or anxiety, one of the two in one way or another.
And they kind of go hand in hand sometimes. Yeah.
They do. Yeah, they do. And it's really sad, like in a way, like so many people hitting you up like, I need help, 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 I need help. What do I do? What do I do? But you just have to do as much as you can, right? Like, so I try to reply to as many people as I can, and it really it's not only it makes me feel good because I want to be a positive influence, but I really do think I have advice that can help people that are dealing with the stuff that I've dealt with. So that's what's really given me my sense of purpose and made me feel like podcasting and everything that I'm doing now is what I'm meant to be doing. Because I can feel, for the first time ever, I've done a lot of shit. I wrote a book. That's something that not many people can say they did. It's really tight. It's in my Twitter bio and shit. So anyway, I don't even know where the fuck I was going with that, but humble brag all over the place.
Well, it's crazy to think about how many people may have gotten sober because you did. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Right? I hope that's right. Like, I've done a lot of really, really bad shit, and I hope that I'm balancing it out some. I never really hurt anybody except for myself, so I don't want to make it sound like I did. But I hope I'm balancing out some of the pain that I brought to my family.
Yeah.
For real,
karmic energies.
Yeah. I just want to balance out whatever it is that I'm doing.
I like that. I mean, anytime I think that you can find ways to build community and find common ground with people, it's a beautiful thing, and it raises the vibration on the planet, and it's probably what we're all here for at the end of the day.
Can I ask a question? I know it's your show.
No.
Did you guys intentionally do the one of you has white headphones and one of you has black headphones?
No, but nice.
It kind of, I know.
It's cool. It looks good. Oh, it really did work out. There's your balance right there.
Yeah. Also, I'm always in a green background and she's in a pink. But right now it's not so bad because we have daylight. Usually we're doing these interviews late at night.
Yeah.
So when we were on your show last month, we came across some common ground between the three of us when it came to the topic of anxiety, which you've touched on a little bit here already. When did you first start experiencing signs of anxiety, and what tools did you use to work through those issues?
So I've had a lot of time now to think about the origin of when the first time I think I experienced anxiety was and all that. And it's changed over the years, because at first I thought the first ever panic attack I ever had was on my 21st birthday. And I think that's still accurate, but I definitely had a version of a panic attack, or like a lesser version of it, on a flight back from Mexico, like 2 years before that. And I didn't remember that until years later. I attributed it to like some type of altitude sickness or some shit like that. Okay. It was an anxiety attack. I just didn't know what that was yet. But yeah, help me get back on track.
Well, firstly, you attached it. So just to go off that point you just made, because this is interesting to me, how we decide to label our anxiety or panic or whatever it is, and how we then attach things externally to it when it's such an internal journey.
Sometimes people just say, oh, it's just work stress. And
yeah,
really...
or like, I can't fly on planes because I have panic attacks on planes. And it's like, no, the plane isn't bringing on the attack, though, right? It's like what you're saying.
Right.
The plane was where you had it, so you thought it was altitude related. You thought, you had all these reasons and excuses to give it that are external, but it was some chemical thing that was going on inside of you, right?
Yeah, but the first full-blown panic attack I had was literally like so beautifully, ironically, on my 21st birthday. When I had been on probation for years, I had been waiting so long to I'd gotten off probation. I was about to be able to drink legally, go to the bars. I was in college. I was so pumped. We had this big party. I got blackout drunk, and I woke up the next day, and I went to a bar with one of my best friends, still one of my best friends to this day. He's actually my co-host on Oysters, Clams, and Cockles for the 15th plug. We went to a bar. I had one beer, and like halfway through the beer at noon for lunch, watching this football game, like having my first legal, like being a man, having a lunch beer, I fucking lost it. I lost feeling in my hands, my feet. I was freaking out. I couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding out of my chest, like, most intense panic attack you can have, and I had no idea what it was. I'd never experienced anything like it. I thought I was dying. I was like, well, this sucks. Well, at least I had my 21st birthday, I guess. Like, I was ready to call an ambulance, like go to the hospital, the whole 9 yards. And the bartender was like, I think you're just freaking out, man. Like, here, drink some of this cranberry juice. And he kept making me these half cranberry juice and waters, and I was chugging them because I didn't know what else to do. And so I puked up cranberry juice all over the side of my friend's Mercedes after that. But from there, it was like the longest struggle of my life. I hope I never go through another struggle of this length, because it took so long to figure out what it was, how to treat it. And I mean, years and years and years of talk therapy, and I've been cutting things out of my life like alcohol to get to a point where I'm like manageable. Because don't get me wrong, like, I have panic disorder, but it's been a long time since I had a full-blown panic attack, because I've found a way to live and avoid them. When I used to have them frequently, it was crippling. Like, I couldn't do shit. I would have them I'd be in bed for a week. Like, it was brutal. Hell. And it almost makes me feel like I made it up somehow, like it was a nightmare. That part of my life existed where my brain was in that place. And just a short period of time later, I'm now here, and I no longer have those horrific mental panic attacks. It's just crazy.
That's exactly how I feel after a panic attack. It's like so debilitating. And then the next day, when I look back at it, I'm like, was that me? Did that happen? It feels like I was almost sleeping, like it was a nightmare.
Like a dream.
Yeah. But I do notice, and not with every panic attack, definitely not the case, but I do notice that the days that I do tend to have a cocktail at dinner, the next day I have that little bit of anxiety. And I wonder, I notice though, a lot of people who drink regularly wouldn't notice that because they drink the next day. And so they don't know that like it's that toxin in their body that may be causing that anxiety. And a lot of them would just think it's a hangover and do hair of the dog, have another drink. Or they're drinking every day to where they don't even get to experience, be able to notice that it's alcohol that causes that, next day effect. But I do notice, because I drink so rarely, that it is always the day after.
Yeah, it's weird because, I'd say I've probably had, I don't know, let's say I've had 500 panic attacks. Then 475 of them were caused by drinking. Like,
that's so interesting.
I was hungover for so many of them, for almost all of them. Like, alcohol was such a big trigger. And it's like, for me, I took it as like God giving me something to try to help me avoid the issue in my life that I eventually did have to face, which was that I cannot drink. I have a drinking problem. I'm not an alcohol person. For me, it felt like that. And you can take that for whatever. I know there's people who look at it different ways, like the universe or whatever the fuck. But that was a gift for me.
Definitely. 100%.
Like 100%. I would be a totally different person that I can see me like in the other timeline where the panic attacks didn't happen, and that guy fucking sucks. And I'm so happy that I didn't end up that way.
I think it's this is such a topic that holds all this taboo around it, anxiety, panic, even depression, all these disorders that I don't even like calling disorders because it's something that lives in all of us. It's just a matter of when we decide to access it during our lifetime, or if we push our bodies to a point, like sometimes with drugs or alcohol or whatever it is, that maybe it's even just a poor diet or lack of exercise that gets us to this point where we basically tap into I shouldn't say tap in, we have an imbalance that happens, and then we have to experience our consciousness not being able to contain itself in the nice little box it normally is able to. And I think when you drink alcohol or you use a substance that's affecting the chemicals in your body and brain, you end up with side effects. And sometimes, depending on where you're at, what's going on, all the circumstances of your life, sometimes that ends up, like you're saying, in panic or anxiety. Right. But voicing these issues and the fact that you experience them and how you experience them, and when Jade and I voice how we experience them every single time, I can feel how people listening will feel a little bit less alone, because I know when I was going through this in the beginning, just like you were saying, Ross, when it first started, I was like, oh fuck, what's wrong with me? No matter if you've heard other people talk about anxiety or panic attacks a million times, once you feel the fear that comes with it, you feel completely alone in it. You feel like this is no one.
This
can
can't
help
be
me.
what they're talking about.
Because
this
it's so much
worse.
bigger in your own head, right? It's so intense.
That phenomenon that you're explaining is insane. I mean, I have tried so many times to explain this to people, and the closest thing I can compare it to, and I wonder, Jade, if you agree with this, is like having done ayahuasca and stuff. When I took LSD and tripped on acid for 12 hours, that's the closest thing I can compare it to a panic attack, because it was the only other time in my life where I was like, holy shit, I didn't know your brain could do this. I didn't know the human brain could experience feelings like this.
And you also can't just turn it off.
Yeah.
And I had over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other part of it. And the first time I had a panic attack that I had fully realized was a panic attack, like one that I was like, and now we're having a panic attack. It was the same feeling. I was like, I can't believe all of this time, 21 years I've been alive, and there have been, I assume anyway, lots of people out there who have this exact thing happen to them, and I had no idea it was even a possibility. And it's obviously very intense. Like
finding that that's really what you're describing exactly is the scary part. It's not so much the feelings and everything you're going through in that moment, the emotions. It's realizing your brain is that powerful. But the beautiful part of it, so your brain is so powerful that, and especially, a very creative mind. I think we said when we were talking on your show that only intelligent people can have panic attacks. Maybe that makes you feel better. But this very creative part of your brain turns on and becomes disaster mind. It spirals down this rabbit hole of terrible, terrible things that you're creating. I mean, they're completely coming from your own subconscious, and you're just becoming conscious of it. They've always been there. They always will be there. They will continue to be there. But you're just unable to control them in the moment because of some chemicals that are, messed up. When it comes to LSD, I know my experience with LSD was, and it probably depends a lot on how you walk into that scenario, if you're guided in with calm, kind situation, or if you're in a party with a bunch of people. Yeah. But in any case, when I was on LSD, I was with, friends, and I was it was a very fun, happy situation, and I wasn't so afraid. I'd done, MDMA before that, and I had experimented with other things that I had positive experiences with. So I only thought, okay, well, this is going to be positive. And although I saw a lot of scary things, when I saw them, I knew, okay, well, this is the drug, and I could tweak them to positive. So I would see devils everywhere, and I would turn them into my boyfriend's face or whatever it was, things like that. So, but knowing that your brain is creating this shit, and it's completely, there's infinite possibilities of what it can create. And then if you can figure out how you can gain control over it, that's where you have this mastery of mind, right? And you become enlightened, or whatever you want to say. This is the end goal of this. But I think for anyone listening to this, I just want to say that, firstly, you're not alone, even though it feels like what you're feeling is no one could have ever experienced it, because it's so gnarly. And at the same time, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You will get through this. Tomorrow is going to be a new day. Next minute might be even better than it is right now. You And then the other thing to remember is that on the other side is some sort of mastery. You will figure out how to manage this, and it will push you to this more enlightened space. You know, it'll push you to this, to become this person that's better than you are today.
There's wisdom on the other end.
For sure.
As somebody who went through, I mean, the thick of it was like a 6-year period probably where I was like, oh, my life will never be better than it is right now. I'm stuck at this level because I can't manage this anxiety, and this is just the new me. This is the new level. I'm going to have panic attacks all the time. I can't figure out how to manage them. This is it. For the longest time, I genuinely believed like the rest of my life was going to be that way. And then slowly but surely, you know, if you work at it, and everybody has their pace. I think some people can figure it out in a year. Some people it takes a decade. Some people it takes 40 years. But if you work at it and you try to get to the root of your issues and what it is that's causing you to have this fight or flight reaction gone awry, I believe you can fix it. And not even fix it, because that makes it sound like something's wrong. Just, I believe you'll respond to it differently. I think I still have the same triggers that I've always had for anxiety and panic attacks, including alcohol, including whatever the fuck. At one point, I couldn't drive a car for 8 months. I don't really know what that was about, but I had a panic attack every time I drove. Yeah, so, and that no longer is the case. I've been driving for a couple of years again, but
maybe
I think I have all the same triggers. It's just that I've figured out and learned over the years, the course of a decade now, how to master and kind of keep everything in check to where it's supposed to be, you know, if that makes sense.
How did you, like when you say, just to take the driving example, because I had that too, I would start panicking when driving. I mean, panic would just pop up wherever the fuck I let it. Basically, when I was weak-minded in that moment, the shit would pop up and I didn't know how to manage it. I had no tools. I hadn't done any of the work that I've done to this point at that time. And so it was just popping up everywhere. And sometimes it still does, but now, you know, you have a quicker way to you have tools in your tool bag. You're ready, right. You know, to slay those dragons.
Right, yeah.
When that started occurring for you, like like I was saying, the driving thing, for example, every time you got in the car, you knew that this external thing driving was your trigger, right? And so you got into that mindset of panic again. The disaster mind started racing, you know, all the thoughts started racing. Your script was going negative. Oh my God, all these things are going to happen. I'm going to pass out. I'm not going to be, whatever. I don't know what your script was. I know mine was just like the gnarliest things.
Similar. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you get past it? Because now you drive. So just for an example for our listeners.
The driving one was different for me. It wasn't the same exact feeling as a normal panic attack with all those feelings of dread and like you're going to die and you don't know what's wrong. Like what you just described was for me a normal panic attack. The driving one was like, I have to escape. I have to get out. Like I'm stuck. It would often happen like at a red light with like 2 cars in front of me because I knew I couldn't go wherever I wanted in that moment. And I needed to be able to, and I couldn't start freaking out. I've had all these weird instances of it, though. There was like a stretch where it just always finds different ways to form. And the driving one has always been, it never made sense to me. I've never been able to completely figure out why that started happening. But the thing I always tell myself, and I've reminded myself of a million times, and that I always tell people who hit me up telling me they're having a panic attack. First of all, there's this video on YouTube. It's called the Kurioshi C, and it's like Kuroshio, somewhere around there. If you Google that, it'll pop up. It'll be the first thing up there. It's a video, and it's this giant aquarium, and it has a song that plays over the video called Please Don't Go by Barcelona, and it is panic attack Pure 101. Like if you play it, I swear to God, just watch the video.
Magic trick.
Yeah, totally.
I've watched it a million times. It is absolutely a magic trick with a J. Anyway, but reminding yourself it's gonna end. No one's ever died from a panic attack. It can't kill you. It's just your brain. It's gonna end, and you're gonna be fine. And then you just have to go minute by minute, and it's gonna suck for a little while. But once you accept that there is an end, maybe it's 2 minutes from now, like you said, maybe it's in 1 minute, maybe it's an hour and a half. Sometimes it sucks longer. I don't know. The point is you're going to come out the other side, and you have to remember that and just try to stay positive inside of the panic even. Like, I know that sounds insane because you're panicking and it's a negative thing, but you can find a way to harness it and make it positive because most of the people that are listening and have panic attacks are probably like what the fuck are you? Not possible. I promise you it is. Like, if you have enough of them and you think at it enough and you work at it hard enough, you can slay that dragon. We keep using that same analogy, but
it's totally true, though. The breakdown of it, I don't know, maybe the science behind it, right, is that what actually is happening, whether you're conscious of it or not, in the moment is that you have this negative mental script going on in the back of your brain that's, like I said, it's always there, but it's suddenly, maybe, it starts becoming more forefront in your mind. And now your body is starting to respond to this, whether subconscious or conscious script that's happening, and hearing, oh, we're in trouble. What do they say? The crane is falling. The crane is falling. Like, run, get out of the way. It's a fight or flight mode, and you're in this sympathetic nervous system part of your body. Your brain's all responding this way, like it needs to run from a lion, essentially. But That's not the reality. And you're going, why am I having all these responses? Why is all the blood wicking from my hands and feet? And I have cotton mouth and I can barely breathe because I'm hyperventilating so bad and my heart's pounding out of my chest, all these things happening because your body's responding to this script. And so, like you're saying, yes, it seems like, well, no, I'm in this panic and the panic has got me. It's like, if you can reframe that to the actual science of it, the science of it is that actually your subconscious, your actual thoughts are what caused this in the first place, whether you realized it or not. And so if you can turn that around and start saying to yourself, essentially, we're okay, we're going to get through this, and then pulling your tools, whether it's breathing techniques, whether it's listening or watching your video you mentioned on YouTube, or whatever your other techniques might be, right, to get you out of that place and get your thoughts back in the right state of mind where they're calmer thoughts, they're not all disaster mind thoughts, and eventually walk yourself out of that.
You referred to the toolbox like quite a few times, and then you just mentioned a couple things that I think most people with anxiety who have tried to add tools like breathing techniques and such, like that's what you're talking about when you're talking about a toolbox, the tools that you can bust out to try to use to help yourself in those situations. And I would say for people who are out there, maybe you watch the video I just suggested, it doesn't help you. It helps a lot of people, I'll just say that. But maybe it doesn't help you. There's been a lot of things suggested to me that didn't help me. I went through this whole fucking 3-hour training deal to learn this breathing therapy at one point several years ago to help me with my anxiety stuff, and it didn't do shit. It made it worse for some reason. For me, the process of programmatically breathing made it worse. I don't know. I was like, my brain has even more power now. It's just doing
too much oxygen.
So just keep at it is what I would say. Don't give up and don't get discouraged if somebody gives you advice or a tool that doesn't work for you, because maybe you just have to find your own. And that's kind of the thing with me was that people would suggest things for me or tell me well, you just have to breathe from your chest, not your stomach. It's like one of my doctors, who, by the way, was just fucking awful. This woman was so bad. That's a whole other deal. Don't get me going on doctors. Make sure you have a good psychiatrist and a good doctor. Yeah. So hard to find, and don't just trust anything people say. They're just regular fucking people with bigger degrees. What were we talking about?
Well, you were breaking down the tools that did or didn't help you.
Anyway, yeah. So don't get discouraged. You will find things that work if you look for them, but you have to look, and some of them aren't going to work.
That's it. They can't just sit there. Yeah, you have to.
Or just take a pill.
You have to do something, not just mask the symptoms, but actually do something different that.
Yeah, I did that for a long time.
Yourself.
Wallowing around in your own self-pity and feeling sorry for yourself, and that's not doing anything. You're just making everything worse.
No, you have to be active. Yeah. So
I was sorry, Jade. You heard me breathe. You can hear me breathe now. No, I was really going to say something because I know you're going to move off. You're going to move us off the subject, and I don't know how much we're going to put into the show just because we've gone on and on and on. I'm sure we'll have to cut it down a little bit, but I think it's just so beautiful that you're sharing with people, Ross, that you have experiences and the way you've experienced it and, your story, because like you said, everyone's story is different. What works for everyone is going to be different. But because you brought up people wanting to have an answer now, okay, well, if that's not working, then nothing you're talking about is even relatable and it's not going to, it's not going to work for me. I wanted to just say, for our listeners' sake, that, we all know there are anti-anxiety medications and drugs out there, antidepressant drugs and whatnot out there. And I don't want to knock any of those drugs. I think they have their place and sometimes they're super necessary and will get you through. But it is not something to lean on for the rest of your life, just like we're talking about with other addictions.
There's other options.
There's a reason your body's telling you that you need to take care of something when you're having this panic and anxiety. And even though it's not a lion chasing you, in that moment, there is something else going on with your body chemically that you need to respond to. And I think probably for,
Consequences.
and I might be speaking for all three of us, you correct me if I'm wrong, but out of the darkest places, like we were talking about with contrast, out of the darkest places where you were in this panic or anxiety in your life, a lot of light has probably come because you were pushed to do it. You're motivated because of those hard fear.
Yeah.
So
Consequences are a gift.
Exactly. Listen to what's going
yeah.
on in your body and do the research. You know, we always promote that on the show, like read up, figure it out, watch YouTube videos, listen to podcasts on it, you know, find your community.
And our whole point in this show. No, go ahead. Sorry.
The anxiety stuff, it's just so important that you don't give up and that you keep the search going, because that's the thing. You're dead on. I feel like people try one thing and it doesn't work, and they're like, "Oh, nothing's gonna work."
Yeah.
No, you're not trying. You're not actually trying. Just because you've convinced yourself you're trying or you're doing something doesn't mean you fucking are. And to that, I would say this: it's so important to have a good group of friends around you that can tell you when you're being a piece of shit and you're not trying, and you need to get off your ass and go fix it. Because if you don't have that, you go. Who knows? You can go the rest of your life being wallowing around in your own self-pity or whatever. Like, you need good people around you who will give you a kick in the ass if you need it. And as somebody who's gotten lots of kicks in the ass, that's super important. You got to have that. You got to try to build people around. I mean, some people, it can't be their family. With me, I got lucky. It was my family. My mom and dad saved my ass so many times, and not just like financially. Like, I mean, with the lessons that they gave me. Some people don't have that. Some people don't have their parents. That doesn't mean you don't. It's not an excuse. You've got to go find a group of friends and people that can hold you accountable. Don't let your circumstances dictate how happy you can or can't be. You have to be the one in control of that shit.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people, with what you're saying, a lot of people may consider their friends or their wife or husband to be nagging, but it's probably coming from love, and they want to see you get better. But one of the goals of this podcast is to make people feel less alone, and that's one of the reasons why we're talking about this, is because it takes the power away from it. So don't be afraid to talk about it either. Let someone know how you're feeling. Don't hide it, because that's what gives it power, and don't feel like you have to be ashamed of it, because there's more people that experience this than you think.
Whenever you tell somebody, like, I'm freaking out right now, I'm having a panic, they're always like, "Really? Holy shit, you look totally fine." Like, I can't even tell. And that's such funny. Like, that's always the Kickstarter. I mean, again, I haven't had a really bad one in a while, knock on wood, but that was always the Kickstarter for me to be like, this is so fucking stupid. I don't even look different on the outside right now.
I know.
Inside my brain, and I feel like I'm dying. This is so stupid. So that would always help me to go down the positive path of like, dude, everything's fine. Talk about it. Talk about it all of the time if you have to. Try to spread out the talking so that it's not to like one person, so that you don't drive them fucking nuts. But talk about it. That's a great piece of advice.
So, Ross, you've written a book. You've gotten sober. You've worked through your anxiety. What are you still longing for?
Man, my focus right now has been helping as many people as possible through the podcast and through growing the Ross Bolen podcast and getting to talk about the things that I get to talk about. It's very similar to what y'all are doing, and it's for a very similar reason. Like, same thing. I don't want people to feel alone either. But everything in my life is kind of built around humor. If you were especially alcohol removed from the situation, like, you could look back and say my whole life has been built around comedy and humor. And my sense of humor and laughing and being funny is the most important thing in the world to me. So that's the kind of difference between, I guess, my show is very silly. There's a lot of talk about really silly shit. So I want to do some combination of entertaining people and helping at the same time if I can. So I try to mix the comedy with the very serious. If I could give an example of somebody who's been like an inspiration to me in that way, it would be Neil Brennan, who, it wouldn't shock me if one of y'all has met him at some point. But Neil is the guy who wrote Dave Chappelle's show with Dave Chappelle. He's a white guy, real goofy looking motherfucker. He looks like a weasel, and not a handsome man. One of the funniest dudes on the face of the earth. And he did this stand-up special on Netflix called 3 Mics. Go watch it. It's just a really interesting look at how you can impact people through comedy and mix comedy with really, really serious topics like
which Chappelle's perfect at.
Yeah, and I mean, if you thought Dave was good at it, go watch Neil. It's crazy.
Really? I'm excited.
Insanely talented comedian in 3 Mics. It's called 3 Mics on Netflix.
Right.
Me and him don't know each other. I'm not like plugging my boy.
I'm gonna watch it tonight.
He's just fine without me, I can assure you. Anyway, you got to watch it, dude. It's so good. That's what I'm going for. That's my deal. I want to make people laugh, and I want to make them feel better.
Cool. So maybe to the other end of that, since we're talking about comedy here, on the other end of that, the dark side of that, you mentioned before that you hadn't really experienced depression, or that wasn't a word that you're really able to relate to, but I'm sure you've experienced pain in some way or another. So I'm wondering where those dark parts of yourself surface in your life, and what do you experience pain around?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I remember when you guys came on and we did the show a few weeks ago, and we were talking about depression. Jade specifically was talking about some of her experiences, and I was saying, like, it's crazy because that's the one I don't know, like, that I can't feel, that I don't have. When people describe their depression to me, I'm always like, fuck, I've never hit that note. And since then to now, I actually got a new psychiatrist that, long story short, I'm like, holy shit, have I been depressed? And
new label.
Yeah, so I think it's something that I've started to kind of unravel even in the last couple of weeks a little bit. And I don't know, I'm still not sure, like, if I'm depressed or if I've suffered from depression in the past. I'm not positive yet, so I don't want to put it out there or anything like that. But it's been weird, like, delving into it. And I'm actually weaning off of Prozac as we speak. Like, I'm like 2 months into it or something.
Congratulations.
It's something that I started taking as a result of the driving issue when I couldn't drive. My doctor was like, you have to take something, like, this is getting out of control. So I did, and obviously I can drive now and have been able to for some time. So I was finally like, I'm going to get off this fucking, what are they, SSRI or whatever they call it. I'm going to get off this. I don't want that shit if I don't need it. So I've been weaning off of it. It takes forever. It's like a 6-month fucking, drug should take 6 months to wean off of. Heroin addicts get clean faster than I'm getting clean off of this shit. It's miserable.
But okay, so serotonin reuptake inhibitors, for anybody listening, is what you would normally be prescribed if you were dealing with panic anxiety long term, especially, or really out of control panic attacks that you can't seem to get control of easily. And that's something your psychiatrist would decide for you. So we're not medical professionals here, just to state that.
Oh, no.
But when you're taking that, especially when you're taking that long term, it's changing your body's ability to create those chemicals, right? It's helping you create them, essentially. And it's making you not create some chemicals. So when you're getting off it, like you're saying, it takes a weaning process, because you got to ask your body to start doing that again. Otherwise, your body's been relying on this thing, right, this whole time. So how is that detox, or that, and not like we said, let's not knock this drug, because it does save people's lives. It's people through the toughest times to get to the other side. So how's your come off been?
Honestly, I'm so glad you put it that way, because it really did help me. I really do think it helped me get through that period. Whatever that was I had going on with the card thing, I don't think I got through that. I don't think I would have gotten through that without the Prozac or whatever the generic fluoxetine is what I'm taking. But weaning off of it has been. By the way, also I'm doing it under the guidance of a medical professional, a psychiatrist. It's not like I was just like, fuck this. It takes forever, like I said, and I've definitely noticed. The reason I brought it up, I mean, you asked about pain and depression, and I'll have days now where I'm a little darker than I was maybe the day before, and I'll notice, which isn't something I've noticed for a long time, because I've been on these for a couple years now. So it'll be interesting having to react to that as I get back to, like, my normal brain, that it does have some darkness in it. Like, and the fucked up thing is, I want that back.
Totally.
It's the real me, so I want that version of me. And I know, again, different for everybody. No, I'm not knocking anything. I'm just saying, like, for me, I've gotten to a point where after years and a shit ton of thought and conversation about it, I've decided to get off of this drug. For me, doesn't mean you should or anybody else.
Right.
I hate how you have to fucking reiterate that so hard here, where people freak out on you. But anyway, it's been interesting. So, like, I don't know, where so much of the pain for me that built up my anxiety was from my parents and from their divorce and from my childhood or whatever. Like, I had a great childhood aside from my parents' divorce, but I somehow let that fuck me up bad. Like, and it was a pretty painless divorce compared to most of them, but it got me good. And outside of that, I don't know where a lot of my shit comes from. Where a lot of it because there's definitely like a level of darkness in me that I don't see in any of my friends. And I love dark shit, like even, you know, from an entertainment perspective, like movies and music and such. And I don't know where it comes from. I don't really know. Maybe that's something I'll figure out in the next year, but one thing at a time.
Yeah, I think it's so cool you're sharing your journey with us.
Oh, absolutely.
I have a few friends that drink for a long time, and then I can't tell who I'm interrupting here.
I know, it's all good.
I have a few friends that drink for a long time, and they recently got sober as well, and they started to question, have I been depressed this whole time? Because it was like it was numbing that in them, and after being an entire year or more sober is when they started to ask that question. So that may be...
Fuck. Yeah, it's weird. It sucks, but it's like I also kind of anticipated that, not specifically the depression part of it, but I knew when I cut alcohol out that there was going to be, in some ways, it was going to crop up new challenges, because that's always the way it is.
Because you're going to feel more.
I feel like some people, they quit something that's a bad influence, like they quit smoking, or they quit drinking, or they quit gambling, or they quit sex, or they quit whatever the fuck it is that they think is a negative influence on their life, and then they're like, they expect to wake up the next day and just be this glowing, happy person that is the best version of themselves, or whatever. That's not the way it works. Life goes on, the challenges continue, other shit comes that you have to face. You don't just figure it all out.
And then that addiction comes knocking, because that's how you are used to handling it.
Yeah, that's a never-ending battle. That never stops. And I think that's just, it's funny, like the alcoholic journey, like if you go to an AA meeting and they explain, or you read whatever the book they go off of is called, oh my God, it's terrible that I can't remember, but the AA book, it is so very clear. And every alcoholic goes down the exact same path in like one way or another. It's that way with all things in life, though. That translates outside of AA. I think we all have our different struggles and things we have to overcome. And, you know, as you overcome things, new things present themselves that you have to then face up to. It's never fixed. And for a guy like me, I have to remind myself of that constantly, because you can start to feel like you can't win, that you're always fighting. And it doesn't have to be that way. This is the way it's supposed to be. This is the state of living. It's figuring things out and solving problems and going day to day.
Get through that hump.
So don't let it get you down. That's life. Now you're at the good part. Like, I let it stress me out and freak me out. And I'm like, this is all good shit. And it's been tough to make the transition from things are really bad to things are really good. And I'm refusing to let myself acknowledge it, which is now where I'm at, kind of.
I think, too, if we can just focus on the fact that there is beauty in darkness. And I think we have proof of that. Like you're saying, you're attracted to dark things in entertainment, you know, like in shows, and why vampire books and shows are so popular. Our human brains, we recognize ourselves in those dark things, you know, in those dark but beautiful displays of what that darkness can look like sometimes. And it's important to let that really sink in. I think that darkness has a beautiful side to it. So it seems to be the constant theme of this episode for some reason, but or at least that's what I'm pulling from it today. I don't know why. Is that we need the darkness in order to see the light. We need to have to explore those dark places in order to find our best, brightest selves.
I brought the darkness. That's what I brought.
You brought the darkness. Love it. So we have a question from our Magic Mob at Real, I guess that's how we're going to say it today, on Instagram, says, will you please ask Ross, since he's been booze-free for just over a year, what kind of tactics did he use to avoid drinking in the beginning when temptation was at its highest?
And then he says, gang, gang, gang.
Gang, gang, gang.
All right. That's what we say on my show for some reason. The hardest thing to do will be going to a bar or a party and not drinking, because it's the physical not having a drink, right? So get really good at, figure out what soda you like the best, and then just order that in a cocktail glass. Or like what I like to do now is, if restaurants have big fancy cocktail glasses for certain drinks, like at Wu Chow in Austin, I'm sure y'all been to Wu Chow, it's really good. They make drinks in these incredible tiki glasses. So now when I go to Wu Chow, I make them bring me like a Sprite in one of those. And honestly, that's just for fun at this point. But my point is, it can also help with what you're asking about. So like, I mean, there have been so many different points throughout my life where I tried to differentiate. Like at parties, I would open a beer, pour half of it out, like, and then just carry that one beer around, not drinking it at all for a long time. Like if I was having anxiety or whatever, just to make people.
But what if?
Because if you don't have something, everybody's like, hey, what's up, man? You're not drinking.
Exactly.
What's going on? You're not having to drink. So it just helps if you do.
Exactly.
What if a guy though comes over and got everybody a round of shots though? Like how would you handle that situation?
Just fucking walk off. I don't know. It's really hard
because that's something I see a lot with my friends trying not to drink. Is like, well, then they end up drinking because someone got them a shot, and then it's downhill from there.
Yeah, you got to be upfront with your people. That's the hardest part, is really getting your best friends, your closest people, those around you, to understand, like, hey, look, I'm done. No drinking. Or even if it's for a night. Like, there's nights where people are like, I want to go out and see my friends, but fuck, I don't want to drink anymore. I feel like shit. And they still end up drinking, like you just said. It's like, you don't have to let yourself do that. There's other choices. The other choice being just to not drink. It's very simple. But yeah, it's the shots thing. It didn't happen to me that much. I feel like you get a good radar for that, and you can feel when somebody's about to be like 10 Jaeger bombs or whatever, and just get the hell out of it. Like, go to the bathroom or whatever.
I'm curious if your withdrawals were a temptation. Like, a lot of people, when they stop drinking, they're like, oh, well, now I'm not sleeping well, and now I'm not pooping well, and they've got all these reasons why they need alcohol in their lives. And so after a couple days of like their stomach pain or their headaches or whatever withdrawal they have, they're like, a sip of whiskey would fix this, you know? So did that play a part in temptation for you?
No, thankfully, this is one of the reasons I don't give myself the full credit of alcoholism. I never drank every day. I never drank like that at all, like compulsively or addictively. Like, I never felt like I needed to drink, or I never had any of that. It was a very different type of alcohol abuse, and it was that every time I drank, I binge drank and would just go until the lights went out. So I don't know. I never had the physical withdrawals. I mean, I felt better instantly, like the next morning, and then from there, it'll blow your mind if you've been drinking for like 15 years, like I had, to stop drinking for like a week and then remember what it feels like to not feel like shit. It's crazy. Like, it melted my brain when I got a weekend and a month in and 6 months in. It's like, when you realize you've been living in this cloud the whole time and you didn't even know it. And it's really depressing at first, because you're like, God damn, like, nobody said anything. I've been a total asshole.
Have your connections with your, you know, since you were social drinking, it sounds like a social binge drinking even maybe is the label, right? Have your connections with your friends that you would normally have social drink with, or even just friends outside of that circle that you interact with now, have those relationships deepened because of your
It's weird. I feel like with some they have, and with some they've become a little more distant, because it's tougher for some people to understand, and with other people they see it as a step forward for you, and they want to be closer to you as a result. So,
I guess I know you kind of answered that for us before when Jade asked something similar. I guess so. I'm trying to, let me re-angle that question. So from your perspective, like the way that you're able to see them maybe more clearly, or see, you know, have a clear interaction where you can remember even the next day, has that helped you in those bonding processes? Where, because I know, like, when I go have a drink with someone, you're broing down, and it opens that social anxiety thing up, like we're talking about.
It is. It's a bonding experience. That's why people tend to drink
with their friends and family. Yeah, but then there's like only a level you can get to, and then you black out. So there's this other thing that you can access, right, that you're probably finding now, and that's what I'm trying to dig in with you on, is this other thing you can access when you have a really clear and sober mind with people, right? Sometimes, I don't know, that's what I found. The issue,
I'll say, the way that it has been for me so far, if I'm dead sober, like if I'm not smoking, drinking, nothing is in my system, I get really annoyed after a couple hours. Like, I can't do it. I fucking can't do it. I'm sorry. Like, drunk people are the worst. They're the worst. You suck. I sucked when I was drunk too. I'm sorry. I was probably the worst one of all y'all, and now you suck. But
that's why people, I feel like, think I'm a bitch at a bar, because I'm the only sober one, and I'm super annoyed by all the drunk people.
You're just like, because they get too close. They're up in your face. They're talking too loud.
Oh, and I'm also like, what are you doing with your lives?
Yeah. And they're just actively ruining themselves. No, it's awful. But it takes
your stories don't make sense.
Your stories don't make sense. You're repeating yourself over and over. What the fuck? You just said that. Stop.
But they think that you're having a great time because they're like having this bonding moment with you, and you're like your story doesn't make sense at all.
I couldn't be more miserable. Yeah. So I don't know. I stopped doing that pretty quickly. That's when I was like, I got to be able to lean on weed because shit's not going to work. I can't handle these motherfuckers. But it has been easy since, and I've gotten better at it every time I've done it, and it takes a shitload of practice. Like whether you're going to go actually sober or get high on weed specifically, those are the two things I can tell you. I can't speak to anything else. It takes getting used to either way, just an equal amount of getting used to. It's an uphill battle, and you have to be willing to continuously put yourself in social situations as practice, because that's how you get better at things, right? You practice. So if you practice, you'll get better. If you want to get better. If you don't, then you don't get to complain.
I'm glad you bring up weed as, you use the word escape in conjunction with, in the same sentence as weed. Because I think sometimes people have this idea that because it's a plant substance or, it's natural or whatever they want to call it, that it's just should be part of it's okay to be part of your everyday life. And not that it's not, if that's what you decide, the thing is, I think it's important we take responsibility for the words we attach to vices and the words that we put in our own heads when it comes to like what we use to get through a day, if that's what we're using to get through a day or get through social anxiety.
Yeah, it depends on what you're using it for.
Can I ask you why you think it's important to acknowledge that? I'm just curious. I agree with you.
I think it's important because otherwise we we can easily go down a rabbit hole to other darker, deeper, issues.
Yeah.
Or vices, darker, deeper vices that are really not helpful to our lives or are damaging to ourselves.
Yeah, you have to be honest with yourself about what you're doing and why you're doing it. It's the only way to make
the why is important.
Make good decisions. Yeah. So I mean, that's something that I didn't realize till like last year, which is crazy because I'm a 30-year-old man, but it's for real. Like that's something I didn't realize until like last year, man. You really have to think about that type of shit. Yeah.
Well, too, when we talk about alcoholism, we've all heard, we've all experienced people who are drunk. We understand how it can become really damaging to the person doing it and the people around them when it goes too far. But when it comes to something like weed, which just seems like a much more mild drug, even the way that, especially, I don't know, I'm in California, so we're kind of near the forefront of the whole weed movement. So people, and especially in our culture today, consider it so mild and such a non-consequential
right.
substance,
I see what you're getting at. I think it falls into the exact same category as alcohol for me. It really does. That's going to be a problem. It's going to take some time for us as Americans to kind of figure out that like it's still something to take seriously. Like you can't just smoke weed all day every day and be fine. Maybe some people can. The overwhelming majority of people would not be very productive. That would not work. So no, to me, weed is no different than alcohol. It's a substance that people use to de-stress, to escape, to get fucked up. That's part of the reason that I smoke. Like for real, it's not something I'm ashamed to admit. I get stressed the fuck out during the day. I'm working my ass off. Sometimes shit's not going well. Sometimes I need something to help me feel better. Sure. And it does. And the thing is, it's the one for me that doesn't have any damaging side effects.
Right.
That's why I think it's a good one to choose. Yeah. But
some people, I'll give you an example. Some people start smoking a lot and they get the munchies a lot and they eat a lot. They put on a shitload of weight. I fortunately am not munchies guy. I don't know why. I thought I would be munchies guy, honestly. I was like excited about that part of becoming a smoke weed again. But I'm not munchies guy at all. I'm like too distracted to go fucking eat. I'm thinking about shit. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. I think it helps with creativity, depending on the strand. And for me, it helps with my sleep issues. So if I'm going to choose between a sleeping pill or Ambien or even melatonin, like I think that it's the healthy option. So it is. It does depend on the why.
I wish the people who are extremely judgmental about the whole weed thing would do some research on that in particular. Because, like, look, I don't know everything, man. I'm not a doctor. I don't spend my time. I'm not a scientist. I'm not experimenting, figuring out all the ways this is beneficial or hurtful to anybody. But I can tell you this: with sleep and anxiety, there are absolutely strains, and that's the other thing that these people need to understand. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of weed. Like, they don't just all do the same thing and get you the same kind of high, and you're just a lazy stoner who eats fucking potato chips and watches cartoons. If you take the correct dosage, it can be so helpful with things like depression and sleeping. It's like, of course, if you smoke 15 blunts, you're going to be mentally incapacitated. Same thing as if you drink the entire liter of vodka. But that doesn't mean one drink won't help you relax.
Right.
Like,
and a lot of people, if they're like, oh, I'm having sleep issues, and they're like, oh, you should try Calm Mag. Well, you don't get judged about that. So why get judged about weed strain that is specifically made to help you sleep? So yeah, I see where you're going with that.
The weed stigma is going to take like 10 more years.
I think it's just
hopefully a lot less.
I think it's just important to focus, and this is why I brought it up in the first place, to focus on the addictive nature of whatever it is in your life that it could be fucking exercise. Right. You could replace the word weed with exercise. People exercise themselves to the bone, literally. They damage their bodies.
Too much of anything
can be self-destructive. That's the point, is figure out what your shit is that you're going too hard on and relax on it. Like, find some balance.
My dad told me for like legit, I remember from my childhood up till, when he basically had to stop parenting me, it's somewhere in my 20s. He told me probably 1,000 times, moderation is key. And I would always just stop using the word moderation like this part. Like, I never took it serious. I never understood what he said or what he meant. And then one day I was like, oh my God, he was right the whole time. And I can't tell you how many times that's happened with my parents, where like 10 years later I realized he's dead ass right on me. Yeah,
it's balance. Rough. It's all balance, right? Yeah. So bringing up your dad's little mantra of moderation there, all in moderation, do you have any mantras in your life right now?
No, I probably need one.
You don't? I just was wondering because your dad was a mantra guy. My parents are, my mom specifically is like a mantra person. I have literally mantras all over my house, some from her and some just because I guess inherited that annoying thing.
The concept of a mantra just being it's something you say over and over that you can live by.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be lived by. Like, it can be in the moment.
It's just something you focus on to get through. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to find one though.
Well, you just right now.
I'll take all the help I can get.
Oh, I'm sure now that I said that, you'll be finding them all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. So we also have a pick your poison question for you from Jake Grissom on Instagram. Would you rather have a rewind button in your life or a pause button?
It really depends what you're allowed to do while.
I guess you make the rules. That's all that.
I mean, I'm not a big believer in regret or in overanalyzing, the mistakes you've made. There's things to learn from your mistakes, obviously, and you should always be learning. But being stuck in the past isn't a good thing to me. So I would go with the pause button, even if it was just so that I could pause to enjoy a moment for a little bit longer or whatever. I'm not trying to rewind and go back to do shit I already did. That's the past. So I'm a pause guy.
I like it.
Okay. I would choose rewind.
Good. What would you, why? Yeah. What's your breakdown?
Just there's a lot of things that I'd like to do over, and I'm not just experience again because they were beautiful, but I'm just do over. Damn it. I told them not to come home till 6. It's 5:30. That was another reason. I was like, we're taking a really long time.
I'm sorry.
I can't stop talking. I ramble.
Let me go let them know that we're still recording real quick.
Okay.
Sorry.
The joy of toddlers.
Yeah. How old are her kids?
I'm 3 and 2, I think, yeah. Little guys.
Oh, God.
I can't even. I have 2 cats. That's already tough enough, man.
All right, guys. I got to wrap it up because the kids have to eat dinner and go to bed and all that. I'm sorry.
No, that's...
But we can still ask the rest of the questions because we always end with 3 staple questions.
Okay, you want to finish your answer of why you pick rewind, or you just say that?
Oh, again? I was done.
Okay,
I finished it.
I think I would pick. I'd probably go with Ross on this one. I'm going to say pause because as much really shitty stuff that's happened in the past that I would love to rewind and rework, I have learned so damn much from it. I feel like if I tried to do that again, I wouldn't become like I'm pretty happy with the trajectory of my life. I'm pretty happy with like who I am and who I feel like I'm becoming and all those things, and I would be afraid to fuck that up. Or I don't know. I guess the pause button on that one for me.
Y'all have seen the Adam Sandler movie Click, right?
He like gets stuck and fast forward.
Yeah.
That's the most depressing fucking movie.
Dude.
Like you go into it like thinking it's funny and then you leave the theater like legit depressed.
I didn't like it at the time that it came out, but it is a dark movie.
But the fast forward thing too, it's like, well, I guess the fast forward thing would be nice in the dentist office or like in a painful situation, but then you're not learning from any of the serious pain that you go through. The rewind though, Jade.
You need the experience. You need the experiences.
Yeah, you need the experiences. The rewind I feel like would be good. Like I'm trying to be a vampire at the end of this deal. Here I'm trying to encompass being a vampire, like never dying, being immortal somehow or another. I'm gonna figure it out. But rewind, you feel like you rewind like right at the end every time. Like, oh, nope, life's not over yet.
That's funny.
So there are a few questions I like to ask all of our guests, Ross, that come on the show. I'll kick it off with this one. What would you tell your 25-year-old self if you could?
Oh, so that's six years ago for me. I would probably say, man, buckle up, because it's going to be a long ride. I mean, for me, I'm serious. I wouldn't change a thing. I don't believe in, I think everything happens for a reason. I believe in fate, and I believe in all that. And I think that I am where I am because of what I did and the experiences I had. So I would give myself as much warning as I could, I guess, to be prepared to face anything that may come, because life just never really goes the way you expect it to. And that's something that I know, you hear old people tell you that your whole life. Your adults tell you that you make plans and life laughs or whatever. But when you really start to figure that out, it's a painful little growing process. And I'm kind of in the middle of that right now, where it's like, I've got control of my personal life in a way that I've never had before, and that I'm happier than I've ever been before. But that does not mean I have control over anything else that goes on out there at all. And shit is still going to get weird at times, and you got to be ready for it. That's what I would tell my 25-year-old self.
I like it.
And he would be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Right.
So the next question is, if you could have the whole world read one book, which would it be?
Oh, shit. One?
Are you a big reader?
Not nearly enough to be given this kind of responsibility. I feel like you should have to read like 30 books minimum per year to be allowed to answer that question. Like, one book. I'm trying to think of, you know what? This is really lame, but I love this book, and I'm going to say The Great Gatsby. I think the message behind that book is so cool. And I know it's been made a movie 3 times, 4 times now, and I know there's like the basic ass version of it you can say. I think if you read that book and you read into it really deep, there's really interesting messages about a lot of the stuff that we've talked about, even regarding like partying, booze, excess, luxury, love, loss. It has a lot of that, and that's why they make you read it when you're like 9 or whatever. So I know I probably sound like an idiot right now, but that's the one I would choose. I don't have that many.
No, I think that's a great story.
There's not a bad answer to that question.
And there's a reason that it's been made into a movie that many times, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's true.
Okay, let's see. I think this is the last of our deep questions here.
Mm-hmm.
If you could whisper one phrase to everyone on the planet, what would it be?
It would be, if I could whisper one phrase to every single human being on the planet, it would be, listen to one podcast.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's at least double my listenership, right? And
that's an entrepreneurial strategy right there. That's marketing all the way.
That's really funny. That's a good answer.
I would take marketing up. That's exactly right.
So many people would be very confused if they heard that in their
I know.
ear.
God? What?
Yeah.
Yeah. God told me to do it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm going to listen. All right. Damn. We're pretty much wrapped up here. Just let the people know where they can find you on social media, the interwebs, etc.
You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat at @Bolen on all 3 of those. Bolen. My friend's William Ross Bolen, so that's what I use as my handle. It's actually what I used as my author name on the book too. Bolen, because I thought it sounded more official and cool. And I'm so glad I did now, because I go by Ross Bolen, and my show is the Ross Bolen Podcast, and it's just nice to not have the direct attachment. Like, it's there still, but it's nice to not have it. So at Bolen, listen to the Ross Bolen Podcast. It comes out at least 2-3 times a week. Our schedule is hell. I don't know what the release days are. Just go start listening, and we'll tell you the show. Oysters, clams, and cockles, I mentioned 100 times. Nothing else to talk about there. And I appreciate you guys so much having me on. It means a lot. Y'all are great conversationalists. I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you both on my show, which everybody should go listen to, the episode that y'all were on. But here as well, y'all are real special, and I have a lot of respect for what you're doing.
Damn, thanks, Ross. This was really cool. And, I'm sure we'll be talking again soon and have each other on our shows hopefully again in the future. But I just want to say that I'm really appreciative of the fact that you have exposed your journey, not just like, getting deep with us today on the show and your dealings with anxiety and whatnot that you've gone through, and that you've been really vulnerable and open with on your own show. But even like all the stuff prior, like when you talk about the Total Frat Move book and the website and all the things that have brought you to who you are today. I think it's so cool that you get to look back on that, and we get to look back on that too and see, like, this is who this guy, you know, what he's put out there for the world to see all the way up to this point, and he's basically exposed himself all the way through. Like, that's pretty much being the 100% the real deal. So I appreciate you for that.
That's always been, it's something that I noticed real early on, like when I was going through puberty, like in my teens, and I was 17, 18, 19, like in that range, end of high school, beginning of college, I realized that the people that I respected the most were the rawest and the realest with me. And it just made me want to be that way, like as genuine as possible. That's the goal. And it doesn't always work. Like there are times when I can't be vulnerable and I pussy out just like everybody else. And I put up on, you know, my defense and my mask or whatever. And there are times when I can't face shit and I run away from it just like everybody else. But for the most part, I'm just a big believer in the same thing that y'all are. If you can put your message out there, the more you talk about it, the more you can help, the better this whole fucking shithole of a planet will be. I'm just trying to do my part, but I appreciate it. That was very sweet. Thank you.
That's what people need. So it is making a difference. Thank
sure.
you for making your life speak.
Y'all too, for real.